You're listening to Being Built. I'm Aaron Davis, the host, here with Matt Hale. Welcome to the show and to my office.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so how was your week?
This week, big news is we just closed $8 million round of funding through MK Capital out of Chicago.
Wow, that gives you a lot of runway. That's cool.
Yeah, it does.
You're the CTO or CIO?
The CTO.
CTO of enosix.
Of enosix.
Right?
I always call it a startup, but it's a
big baby.
It's an 8-year company now, so I don't know if we can call it a startup.
Yeah.
We still act like a startup. We still think like a startup. We try and be as agile and open-minded as possible, but we've been building up this company. I mean, I started out actually as a mobile developer.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
it's funny because we don't actually do mobile development anymore. We've kind of like evolved into, we now do integration for SAP to a lot of different things, primarily focusing in Saleforce. But this last year, we actually launched 2 new product lines for MuleSoft.
Okay.
So MuleSoft, we're now a MuleSoft certified partner, and we're also a ServiceNow certified partner as well.
So what do those service partner relationships do for you? Like, what's the impact for that?
In both of those instances, and also we're a Salesforce certified partner, it does help as like a source of like leads. So we do have like dedicated partner managers that work with all those channels. They're able to bring in leads. We also work with those companies during their deal cycles as well.
Okay.
And then from my perspective, I'm over the product development and product organization as all. I work with those product teams within those companies with people who are managing like specific product parts within like Salesforce with their manufacturing industries. Cloud with ServiceNow, we're working within their OT, which is an operational technology industry cloud, and in their
Thanks
IT
for dumbing it
service
down for
management.
me. You knew that question was coming. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So then they have with MuleSoft, it's with a connector that works with their Anypoint Exchange platform.
What's enosix do? So tell me a little bit about the product, like if a stranger was hearing this for the first time.
Right. So enosix is actually Greek for unification. So we like to think that we integrate the front end and back office. We specialize in SAP and we say we're really SAP experts and have deep knowledge in SAP integration. And we allow for integrating somebody's front-end application, so that would be like their CRM system, their IT service management system, or really any other front-end system of engagement, to have deep integration into SAP without as a prepackaged solution. So that means it's kind of like just turning on a spigot and you have that functionality of not just integration, but screens and components to integrate to actually feel like you're interacting with SAP as if you were natively interacting with the SAP application.
So it looks and feels like you're interacting with SAP.
But you're not.
I see.
Yes. Okay. And customers like that because they don't want to do swivel chair. They don't want to have these back-end slow data movement operations where they're waiting to get information. They may have to do some nightly batch synchronization to get that information, or you just get broken processes when you're trying to move stuff between one system and another. A file upload fails, or some records within a file upload fails. My order doesn't actually get created, and then my customer's like, where's the order? Or they're doing manual processes for quoting. So, there's a sales rep. They're out there taking specs from the customer. They write it up, then have to send it over to an engineer who's entering all that stuff into SAP. They're waiting, a week to get a quote back from a customer. What we enable is like in Salesforce CPQ, they can get real-time pricing, this customer-specific pricing, material-specific pricing down to options for configure-to-order or made-to-order goods within their front-end quoting system. And there's not a lot of companies that are doing that deep level of pre-built integration.
Give me an example of the type of customer. What's a typical customer who would use a enosix system for integrating SAP?
One of our latest customers that actually signed with us is Carl Zeiss, who builds like optical equipment like microscopes. They have machines for doing like laser eye surgery. These are all $500,000 machines
Okay.
that are all custom configured with all the different options. It goes into like what are the different features that are for like the machine that's performing laser eye surgery. What's the computer that is controlling that piece of equipment? What are the options for that computer? What's the software that's required for the options or different features that are enabled for the software to control that piece of equipment? Another one of our customers is Sunny's Car Wash. They actually build car washes for that are installed. So
Nice.
It's like what's the different like brushes and different options that apply soap, like what's the dimensions of the site where the thing is being installed. So like all of those go into the configuration of these complex machines. And the only way to do that is to access all of this configured, pre-programmed logic that exists inside of their ERP SAP system. And no one wants to have to recreate that and move that to some other system that is easier to engage with than maybe having your salespeople go interact with SAP, which is kind of more built for an engineering team.
So salespeople are often your end user.
Yes.
Okay. So when they're having to utilize lots of different fields with the kind of deep levels of detail in SAP, they don't have to get into SAP. They can use their app or whatever. That's cool. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that, I think for the first time I understood enosix a little bit. enosix was a customer of mine way back when.
Yep.
So it's kind of funny that I just got to a new level of understanding about it. So what do you do specifically as the CTO there? You're building the product, right?
The products, yes.
So tell me a little bit about your team and how you guys work.
Including myself, we have a team of 12, and we mainly focus on all of the integration components from how do you connect SAP to Salesforce, how's the communication channel over the internet going to be secured, what are the components that have to run in the cloud, how do we access an on-prem system, what are the front-end components that actually have to run inside of Salesforce or inside of ServiceNow. We have to pre-build all of those components and package them up, and then they're handed over to our delivery team that actually works with the customers, and they customize the applications specific to like their business requirements.
Not everybody has brushes.
Right. Yeah, not everyone's. There's only a few people selling car washes out there, but
not everybody's selling laser surgery equipment and car washes and such, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so you have kind of a customized component to your product, and then I'm assuming like new features get added and functionality in the application as well.
Yeah, we build a lot of components that are designed to be configured and designed to be extended. So a lot of the things we do in our products is we build what I like to think of as like little escape hatches of like the customer's going to have something custom for this. That's going to be some custom business process, business logic. We need to build a way for this to be customized at this point. Okay. And then we hand that over to the delivery team, and they actually do those customizations. Okay. In those points.
Your delivery team is that a large team? Is that kind of a nimble?
Well, it's like a hybrid team of employees and contractors that are both like onshore and offshore.
And you said enosix is 8 years old now. Mm-hmm. When you mentioned it still feels like a startup kind of thing. I know that feeling. I worked for a 12-year-old startup once. Yeah, or maybe it was about 10 years old. It still had that startup feeling. It's funny when you said that, it occurred to me how many big companies wish they still felt like that. You get to be 100 people and you have all these layers and hierarchy. I was just talking with a customer about this today. It's exciting and it's sad to grow to that point where you have this kind of stifling, organization.
It's interesting because we're at about 40. I don't think we're quite to 45. We're around 40, 45 employees right now. The last 2 years, we've had these all company get together. So like our last all company get together was just here, and we have them in February. Okay. This year we were down in New Orleans, and then the year before that we were in Tampa. And and we're on this trajectory now where we're going to grow. We're probably by the end of this year we'll probably be 50, 60 employees, something like that. So it's like kind of like once you start getting to that size, having like everybody in the company get together, for a week because we're a completely remote company. Those are kind of like our boost every year. We do that like at the kickoff at the beginning of the first quarter where we talk about, what are the new initiatives, I come up with, hey, this is what the product roadmap's going to be for the rest of the year. I present that to the rest of the company. We talk about sales objectives and what are our objectives for the year, what markets are we going to target, like what things are we targeting. And then it's also just great to get that's your time to like FaceTime with everybody, not only on your own team, but like people that most of the year you're just on Zoom calls with them, or you see them at events, that type of stuff.
Yeah, somebody might not see hardly at all the whole year, right?
No. So it is interesting because now we're thinking of like, well, how are we going to keep that tight knit? Everyone can talk to everybody, and we see each other every year. How do you keep that moving as the company grows and gets bigger? To where you get past like 100 employees. This is really tough to bring 100 employees all together at once in one place.
Then you need staff just to do event planning, or you need to get a consultant that does that for you or something. But I've been part of I guess it was about between 1,000 and 1,500 annual meeting for a big company, and that's a whole undertaking. That's somebody's job for 5 months or whatever.
Yeah, just planning all of that.
Probably a small team doing that, right? But it certainly changes. I'm a team of 4 at present, so when we get together, it's like, hey, let's meet up for a beer, right? Exactly. Come on over, hang out in the office or the studio or whatever, right? Yeah, it's pretty easy. But you, in the span of a couple of years, have gone from a couple dozen to now you're looking at 60. So things do change quick. It's funny when you show up and like, who is this? What is this group, right? 15 people you have never met in person or whatever, and when that's 25% of the team, it's a big deal.
I mean, so like at this last thing that we had in New Orleans, I mean, there were people that I had not met personally. Even somebody who reported to me. So I had somebody who she's up in Minnesota, and I had not met her in person for 9 months.
Is your staff like all over the country, or are they pretty?
No, they're all over. I have kind of like a quorum of some people who are here in the Cincinnati area, just because the company's based out of Cincinnati. It started, but it's been remote the whole time. There's people all over. There's people in Chicago. We've got people down in different parts of Texas. People out in California. People over in like the Raleigh area. We've got some people who are actually over in Austria. And
I don't imagine ever moving my company into an office. Companies starting now, it almost seems like a silly idea to even have to concern yourself with. Right? A lot of new and starting businesses or whatever just would rather not deal with the hassle of it. Yeah, there are hassles in having a remote team, but there are hassles in having a building too, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had a couple different buildings that we shared with other companies. And we had some different like shared working spaces that we, like the Fuel Collective, we were in there for like about a year. Yep. It's funny, we were actually looking at getting a new office down at Fountain Square, and we were going to sign the week before the pandemic hit.
Really?
Yep.
Dodged that bullet, huh?
Yep, we dodged that bullet. But ever since then, there's really not been an idea of, hey, we would open in like a headquarters or anything like that. Does it make sense to just have shared working spaces to work on for like projects and stuff like that?
I enjoy those spaces just to bump into people or whatever. Even when I'm just by myself, right? Even if it's not, just to have energy of people around you building stuff and doing cool things. It's sometimes when you're small and you work at home or by yourself or whatever, it gets kind of boring in a human kind of way.
Yeah.
So even if I put my headphones in and I work in a busy space with people moving around, somehow it energizes me. Not every day, but occasionally. Every couple of weeks I'll do something like that. So the new round of funding is cool. That's big news.
Yep.
And that's fresh news.
I mean, we were working on that since last year.
Really?
Just through like due diligence, and
I'm sure you had some part in some product roadmap and vision.
So,
product vision.
Looking through our so there's plenty of due diligence on our product and our strategy and everything, which it's interesting. I mean, it's good to get feedback at that kind of like level of outside. Are we going to invest in this company? Or do you guys have do you have sound products? Do you have sound business goals? So it's interesting to get that kind of feedback and to have others instead of just having that sales. Because usually a company like ours, it's just you have those metrics of what are investors saying of like your company. Then that's kind of one barometer of how you're gauged, but then you also have your sales. So it's just kind of interesting to see those two different things where it's like normally quarter to quarter, it's all sales focused on, you know, okay, are we increasing our ARR? What, you know, are we meeting our sales goals? But then there's obviously, you know, expansion through investment. So
intuitively, you would think, I'm growing this business with other people's money, so I'm going to be less responsible and less accountable. But the opposite is true.
No, it's yes.
Because I know this from experience. When it's your own money, you feel at liberty to be careless and make big risks, right?
Yeah.
When it's somebody else's money, you have a tremendous amount of accountability. You have a tremendous amount of responsibility. You answer, you know, to somebody who's got and you also enjoy the benefit of that party being an outside perspective, right? And I think one of the beauties of, you know, venture capital or outside investors in general is you have somebody else you have to prove it to, right? So this conviction that you have based on your anecdotal kind of experience or your subjective experience rather is is challenged by somebody who's maybe not, you know, kind of sold in your, you know, maybe not exactly from your background. I think that's a good thing. It creates the kind of scrutiny you should have as you're building something and hiring people and taking product to market. It can be a nice asset, actually. It also creates pressure.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the feedback we got was mainly on not only the product sound, you know, they also talk to our customers, they talk to our partnerships, you know, our partnerships with Salesforce, ServiceNow, MuleSoft, they check in on all that kind of stuff as part of due diligence. But then they also want to hear, like, what's your sales, you know, how are you selling? What are the techniques you're using? Mm-hmm. They also do give you feedback at the end that's like, okay, you know, maybe you're not thinking about this. It's just also good just to kind of get that sanity check. Because when you're doing it like day in and day out, you always forget like all these little things. Like even when I was explaining it to people, it's like you forget about all these little things that just you think are, you know, well, that's easy, or, you know, everyone should know that. Mm-hmm. Well, they don't. It's good to get that kind of like outside perspective of like, well, tell me more information about that. And it's like, oh, wait a second. Okay. You know, these people are not experts in this space.
Yeah. How you're selling is intriguing. That's kind of interesting that you would kind of get the, you know, what's your technique, not just what are you selling or, you know, how much are you selling or whatever, but to actually get some scrutiny and then some input on how you're selling. That's kind of interesting. I guess what's the bottleneck then? So when you get this big infusion of capital, then what's the opportunity that creates? What's that kind of hump that it'll help you get over? And then that kind of segues into another question, which is where do you see enosix going in the next year or two?
So a lot of that is actually going to go into the product team. As far as building out the product team, we're looking at adding about 6 people over the next 12 months.
Are there specific functionality or?
Yeah, it's mainly developers for Salesforce, some front-end development resources. A lot of so it's interesting because we only have a team of 12 and there's really only four developers, like who are just sold like developer. You're just working on tickets, you're developing. You know, you hand it off to QA. I've got 2 QA people. I've got some other, I've got a development manager, QA manager, business analyst, and then another person who's actually just, they do training. They do internal training on all the products to enable the sales team. Okay. The stuff that we're selling is super complicated because it's all these integrations and it's a ton of different tech of like Salesforce, ServiceNow, SAP. Like, it's tough to just bring in a salesperson and like, not have their head spin. Yeah. So it's like one of the things we've been working over last year is actually like, how do we create like digestible stuff to make digestible content like through learning management, internal learning management platform for all of our products and all of the technology that surrounds those products. So that way our sales teams can be informed enough to have intelligent conversations with people.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, aren't you going to invest in sales? But to a degree you are with the learning element there. That's interesting. Yeah, the complexity of your product, it does make sense that sales enablement is probably just as important, if not more important, than the volume of people knocking on doors, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, because if the salespeople don't understand how the stuff works, or they're just they are not confident and enough to be able to communicate well with the customers, it makes the sales process very difficult. They're constantly have to bring in myself or one of my technical people to kind of back them up. I personally don't think they really need the backup there, but they need the confidence to be able to get on a phone with a customer, explain it well enough to be able to get to the next point, which is where we bring in our solutions engineers. They can build customized demos to show to a customer. And really, from what we've seen, once we kind of get to that demo, we've got like a 50-50 shot of actually closing a deal. Yeah, of being able to close a deal with a customer. But it's like just getting them to have enough information so that way they know the context around where our solution fits into a business user's process to be able to convince them to get to that next point.
Product, sales enablement.
So some of the stuff we're building out actually this year that these resources are going to help with is where solution to date has mainly been what some people like to call a point-to-point solution. So we have Saleforce and SAP directly talking to each other through this channel. That's our own proprietary protocol, essentially. It's an HTTP protocol, but it's fairly it's not something standardized. What we're doing is we're moving those to an API layer, so that way we're able to then allow customers to run those transactions through MuleSoft or run it through our own API layer that's running in SAP Cloud. And that's going to also open up channels where people can just call those APIs without our front-end technology. So it allows it to be extended out to other platforms. That's how we're able to interface with ServiceNow. And it's being able to kind of build the next version of a lot of the technology stack that we have, and then also redundancy. So we're at one point in time running between 4 and 6 projects at a time with 4 developers. So like if anybody's on vacation, anybody's out,
slow down.
That's all slows down. Like I had somebody that was out sick 3 days this week, and that knocked a project back a week.
Just for a little cold. It's
just for a cold. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of it's also just building in redundancy to the team.
So you can back each other up and still make progress on things. You've been with them for several years now. You said you started as a mobile dev. And then
started as a mobile developer.
Kind of took on some management leadership responsibility, right?
Yeah, so I think I've had 4 different positions there. So I was a mobile developer that then became their first Salesforce developer, taught myself Salesforce at the same time. And then I became the director of development. And then I was then actually the senior technical architect. And then from that became the CTO.
How many years you been there now?
7 and a half.
Okay, good.
7.5. I started like after they were there for about 6 months.
So you were pretty early in.
Yes, when I started, there was only like 4 or 5 people at the company.
You were in the early batch.
Yeah.
If you can recall what you expected in enosix as an organization and a product, and it's really a product suite, you have multiple products, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can think back then, 7 years ago, what you imagined that organization being, what surprises you now when you think back to what you expected and what you imagined it being? What's happened or transpired, or what have you learned or run into that you didn't expect back then?
I would say what you're doing those first years as like a startup is really, you're kind of just throwing darts at the wall, trying to figure out what's going to stick. Like at that point in time, we were...
So you thought you were just going to work for a year and then...
Oh, no, I didn't think I was just going to work for a year, but I would just say, what you start out doing is not what you end up doing at the end. So, we started off doing mobile development for SAP. We were going to do, enterprise mobile applications, still doing the same thing that we're doing now. We're enabling the front office to access the back office and that unified method, but we thought we were going to do it with native, mobile applications. I guess what we figured out is we were way too early into when that was actually going to happen inside of corporate America. We did have a bunch of companies, we still have companies doing Schindler elevators. They actually have their application, so if there's ever an entrapment in an elevator, They have a mobile application that we built that runs through our framework that they submit service, like it's a field service application for reporting that back and like handling that.
So I guess expecting that the world, Enterprise America, was going to download native apps and
that was going to be that everyone was at that point in time, mobile applications were kind of everyone needed a mobile application, right. And it seemed like that was this endless oasis of business. But I think everyone, once they got into, okay, what does it take to actually build a mobile application? What does it take to manage a mobile application and rolling it? I mean, the hardest thing was actually rolling this stuff out to hundreds of business users. A lot of companies just didn't think of that and didn't understand, well, it's not just the people building the software. We need something to manage all of these devices and manage the software going out to people. So
yeah, true.
So I think that was some learning, some learnings we got from it. I would say the way that we got into Salesforce actually is one of our customers saw some of the stuff that we were doing and saw it was actually we built a prototype for one customer to do integration to Salesforce. It's just a prototype of just a proof of concept for doing this quoting and ordering process.
Okay.
And the way it worked, it just did something in the background. It was, it wasn't super robust compared to what we have now. But another customer actually saw that and they were like, this is exactly what we need. There's nothing that's doing anything like this. The customer doesn't want to spend millions of dollars to do this integration, and we think that what you guys are doing, you could help accelerate this project.
So you productized it.
Yeah, so we build it with the customer and productized it. I guess the biggest thing to learn from those early days is, what you start off with isn't, it's very hard to figure out where you're going to be a year, the next year.
We make stuff up though, don't we?
We're innovating. I wouldn't say we're making stuff up. We're innovating. So
I meant in our planning. We bullshit ourselves a little bit. 2 years from now, we're going to be here, and then you take a left turn and you don't even get close, right? You sometimes you get directionally pulled somewhere, but it's funny sometimes.
Even now, I try not to plan more than 6 months into the future on things. I have short-term goals of okay, I know we're going to be able to do this in the next 6 months. I have clarity on what we're going to be building, and that's not going to change. There's nothing that could happen externally, there's some new opportunity that comes up or something like that, or we need to shift direction or something like that. None of that's going to change what that's going to happen. But then there's stuff, 6 months and then next year, it's really hard to tell what we'll be doing then. Yeah. I mean, I have roadmap for that, but that's always kind of, it's kind of moving.
Yeah, I mean, staying responsive, you call it agility, that startup feel or whatever, where you're. So, if you dial back 5 years or whatever, you're building mobile apps or whatever, 7 years, whatever it is, and you're thinking that's what it's going to be. We're going to build mobile apps and support it for, the enterprise. America is going to have our mobile app. Yeah. And how far off that was, right, from what it ended up being. It makes it hard then to get to a point where you're like, this is what we do. We're going to do this well. We're going to keep doing this. And I think no matter how big you are, Netflix was mailing me DVDs, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
No matter how big you are, you have to figure out how to pivot fast and hard, right? So 8 years in, if you're still thinking in 6 month chunks, right? I'm looking out a year and a half, 2 years, whatever, but I'm planning, I'm making commitments that are months out, right? Not years out. I think that's smart because 3 months from now, when you're in the middle of that, whatever kind of build or release or whatever you're working on, you'll learn something, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And that'll inform the year later.
It's interesting because there's the things that you learn while you're building it, and then there's the things you learn when you're implementing it. So there's a big difference between, we're building, these components, we're going to roll it out to a customer, and then the first customer gets it, and they throw all these things that you couldn't think of.
That sounds like you have a story in mind. Give me an example.
Okay, so one of our customers, HD Supply, one of the things they wanted to do was single sign-on. So we need to be able to, because we're interacting with a fiduciary system, when they're creating orders, you want to make sure that the person who's creating the order, it has to be the same. It has to be the person in SAP. They need to be able to track that order creation back to the right person.
I see.
So one of the things for that account is we had to implement single sign-on.
Okay.
And we built that in our own SAP environment, and we were able to build, the single sign-on solution. But then when we go to implement it with a customer, you're interacting with their IT resources, with their processes and all of that.
Not a startup.
Yeah, not a startup. A large enterprise that, you can only jump on a call with them for an hour at a time, and you're lucky to get the right resources. Yeah. And when you're asking them to do something, it's like, I don't have access to do that. I got to go get the security team.
And the meeting might be a week out anyway.
Yeah, I got to get somebody from the security team, and they're not available. Let me see if I can call them on the phone real quick. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the stuff we learned from that is not only building the product, but trying to build the guides, or what are all the supporting things that are going to be needed around it for the implementation to make the customer, as enabled as possible. So that way, we're not stuck in these, long meetings.
Yeah, this pre-go live checklist of sorts, right?
Yes. Yeah, and actually we came up with one of the things is we started building templates for them of those checklists of all of these things, and helping them with all of that. And that kind of goes back to, as you grow as an organization, it's especially as a product organization, you start realizing that your products are more than just the software components. Yeah. It's all your documentation. It's all your processes for how you're implementing with a customer. It's, all that supplemental stuff that really makes you unique as an organization. I think some of that stuff is actually kind of like your secret sauce. Yeah. Because you could have the best software in the world, but if you can't, get the customer to buy it, make it easy for them to install, make it easy for them to use, make it easy for them to understand. Like, it doesn't matter if your software's better than somebody else.
I'll give you a pizza analogy to that, right? So I have 2 pizza apps on my phone. Speaking of apps that nobody wants.
Yeah.
I rarely eat pizza anyway, so it's weird that I have those apps on my phone. Yeah, it's just sidebar here, but we have entered this era where nobody wants more apps on their phone anyway. Yeah. It's just clutter and it's annoying, right? But I do happen to have 2 pizza apps on my phone. One is Donato's, one is Domino's. I think 2D pizzas. And I don't love Domino's pizza, but I do love Donato's pizza, right? So the other day, last week, sometime we were going to order a pizza. And the Donato's app was so annoying that I literally just bailed on it and got to Domino's. Just because the app was so it recycled me somewhere into another page or whatever. I'm like, I already filled out this page. Swipe, I'm getting Domino's, whatever. Because their app's great. And it's like 5 seconds later, and then, it tells me the whole time how far it is. It's smooth, right? And it's obviously just my personal opinion. I don't like that pizza as much, but I don't care because it's just pizza to me, right? Yeah. It was crazy that in the same way, like your app is the thing that they're buying, right? But not really. They're buying your support. They're buying your implementation. That's a really good perspective. I mean, they really are buying all those other things. Your responsiveness, your attitude, all those things can come into play, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I use both the Donato's app and the Jimmy John's app just for literally the convenience. I wouldn't say that I buy that stuff over something else. It's just the same thing of like, man, this is super convenient. Yeah. I don't even have to think about it. So if they've got my pre-saved orders, I just tap a button and...
It's not like, eloquent cuisine or something. You're not going there because it's the best food you can get or whatever. It's simplicity.
Right. So they've mastered convenience, right?
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. Oh, yeah, great. You got the sauce. These guys got the app.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, so the implementation learning is interesting. You've got me thinking about my business. What extra other little things, the side thing, ease of doing business factors, right?
Yes.
Those things matter too, like 1-page contract instead of a 4-page contract, right? Or whatever. Anything you can do to just make it more easy for customers to do business with you. Because it really is the whole, anything you buy, whether you're buying a candy bar or anything you buy, the complexity of having to buy it affects the
it's not only like the ease, but it's just make it easy for them to understand and kind of getting them over the hump of like, yes, this is possible. This seems like there's no risk to this. like any way that you can reduce risk in their opinion, or reduce, what it takes to just, believe that it's gonna work.
Really. True. Trust, right?
Yeah, so it's all trust, yeah.
I was talking to a guy the other day who has a kind of a hybrid product services business in the information security space. I'm talking about the hybrid entrepreneurs all want products, right? Because you can, map, recurring revenue and all the fun stuff. It's in the multiples of, whatever.
Yeah.
But we're seeing now in this kind of like capital crunch, the implications of the full cost of service, software product, digital product, right? And service organizations, customer success teams or whatever else are getting cut up and beat up, and it's hurting sales, right? There's a lot of bias toward making this. It's more than just a piece of software, right? It is all of the things. It's the total cost of. So, great. I think of like electric cars or whatever else, right? And we haven't really run into. There haven't been a lot of battery replacements yet, right? Like,
yeah.
So there's all these new things as software as a service or whatever has become pervasive. And I guess you could say this is maybe the first kind of almost recession since that's been pervasive, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it kind of tests the whole business model a little bit. Anyway, just more perspective on that same concept that you pointed out. That it really is about the full cost of supporting that customer's need. Because customers don't really. Have you heard of the jobs to be done? There's a whole like framework for selling whatever called jobs to be done. Customers don't really buy products or buy services. They
buy the company.
They buy something getting done for them.
Right.
That's the premise of that book. Is they buy a solution. Right. They have a problem and something gets done for them. It's a job to be done. They don't care if a man pops out of a box and hits it with a hammer to make it work, or it's some kind of spaceship or whatever that does it automatically. It doesn't matter. They pay to get that thing done, right?
That's one of the things I think that's interesting is our company sells to business users. So our primary people are, people who are selling their software, or the people on the that are managing teams handling, service requests.
Okay.
And they mainly buy us for the functionality provide, not, it's not like they're buying a software component.
Right.
They're buying the whole solution. And really, they're just buying enosix.
And it's all those things. It's the implementation. So how do you guys handle support? Has that been a pain point at all, or is that smooth, or what's your experience been?
It's fairly smooth. So we we have a service portal that people can go log tickets on. Luckily, and I'm going to knock on wood here because I'm fairly superstitious, but we really don't have a lot of like support calls.
Yeah.
Let's see, the product team this year, we've only had one thing that was reported, and it was just a configuration issue we were able to resolve without a patch.
Yeah. Okay. Put out some good quality code then. Huh?
Yeah. Well, we have a very good QA team that we do all manual testing with a lot of our stuff.
Yeah.
We run all of our stuff through as the feature's being built, it runs through a full QA cycle. Then before the release goes out, we do full regression cycle on all the software. So most of our support actually comes in as they want additional functionality because all that stuff comes through this
I'll send this to the sales team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good problems to have. How are sales? Are you on track or ahead of schedule, behind schedule?
Our
schedule's the wrong word. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So our sales are doing fairly well with there is kind of what you would call a downturn or whatever.
Sure.
It's nothing that really, shocks us or anything like that,
right.
but
yeah, nothing devastating. The new round of funding obviously will give, add a little jolt to the business. That's got to have everybody excited, building out your product even further. Do you anticipate? So I asked earlier about where do you see things going, and you kind of spoke to product enhancements and so on. Can we dig a little deeper into that?
Yeah.
So when you think about enosix as an entity and your products 2 years from now, where do you think the next adjacent thing is, or the next iteration of improvement? What does that deliver to your customers? What are your thoughts? I know you're not planning that far out, right? But you do kind of forecast and
so the long-term goals are to actually kind of move into other ERP systems. So to move into other ERP systems.
So do the same
like
thing
Oracle
for Oracle,
or to move into other ERP systems. It's kind of where our first stage right now is to kind of build out this middle API layer and move all of our existing tech to this API layer, so that way we can somewhat interchangeably change out whether or not you're using one ERP system or another, and your front end, your system of engagement that you're trying to hook up to that ERP system can be one of multiple different systems.
Interesting.
So then you kind of get like this Lego block scenario where it's like we've got this somewhat homogenized communication layer that's through standardized APIs for business processes, and then you've got pick kind of like what front-end applications are you going to integrate, and what ERP systems do you want to integrate those with on the back end?
Yeah, I was playing with Legos with my son the other day, so that makes me think of that. It's like, I need this the 3-pin Lego or whatever. Well, that would be a big undertaking, I would assume. Add the functionality to be able to plug it into Oracle or whatever else.
I wouldn't think. I mean, yes, I'm sure.
Doesn't seem that daunting to you?
Well, I think if you were to go to any business and say, all right, we want you to start building a new SAP integration layer, go. I mean, yes, that sounds like a daunting challenge, but I mean, we were able to do it. What didn't just happen overnight.
Right. I guess you have a point of reference now.
Right.
Yeah, the interesting thing with you've learned aspects of the business beyond just the unique lines of code that would need to be created that you wouldn't have to relearn.
Right. And we focus on very specific business processes. So we focus mainly in the sales and service processes. We're getting into some of the procurement processes with ServiceNow, but it's not like we're not interfacing with HR or other parts of ERP. It's just very specific things that you would interface with, like a service system or a CRM system.
Okay. Your domain knowledge or your functional knowledge in that kind of like sales, CRM.
Yeah, we mainly focus in on manufacturing companies.
That seems like a more appropriate add-on. That going that same kind of lane in a different ERP system seems like a better add-on than spreading yourself throughout SAP.
There's a lot. So there's a lot of software companies out there. There's Informatica, Dell Boomi, even MuleSoft. Like they build these large iPaaS platforms out there. They'll connect to anything.
Okay.
SnapLogic. There's tons of them out there. They've got a million different connectors, but the connectors are all they're kind of just tools. Like they're just like like here's a hammer, here's a screwdriver, and here's kind of they'll point you in the right direction, but putting the screws in, you're hammering the nails in yourself.
I was just talking to a customer today about a SnapLogic hell that he's in with the performance issue on the
right, exactly. And I mean that's another thing that we focus on is we're doing real-time data virtualization out of SAP. So we're not moving data. Like we're able to show in sub-second performance in a web browser being able to access SAP data. So to do that, there's a lot of optimization we do on like the back end, through the communication stack, through the front end components. We're doing timing on all of that to make all of that performant. If you just were to try and just use some of these iPaaS platforms and just kind of string all that stuff together, it would work, but a user would never accept it because it's going to take 10 seconds for the screen to load.
Man, we're really impatient these days, aren't we?
Yeah.
I don't think I've waited for 10 seconds for a screen in a long time.
Exactly. Well, it goes back to that convenience thing. Like if you're gonna order your Domino's pizza, and it's like, pick your pizza, and it's spinning for 10 seconds, so you can't even see the pizzas that are available. Yeah, no one's gonna want that.
We barely last 3 seconds anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder what the average abandoned time is on an app screen load. It's probably single digit.
Yes. Yeah. Well, if the app doesn't load within a fraction of a second, if they don't see anything, it's like, it's dead. I'll go to something else.
So this might sound like a stupid question. If it is, we'll edit it out.
Okay. So it's good. Get ready for your editing.
You ready, Emerson?
Yeah.
Here comes the dope question. So is SAP a competitor?
No, we're a partner with SAP.
Okay. So it's intriguing to me that they wouldn't have interest in building some of this this functionality.
So SAP does have their own integration platforms. Mm-hmm. So they have this. It's called Cloud Platform Integration, CPI.
Okay.
That tons of people use. Even some of our customers use our technology in parallel with CPI, or they do the same with MuleSoft or Del Boomi or any of that other stuff. But once again, you have to kind of like use those tools to construct your own house.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas we're just pulling in the pre-built modular house and just
they're selling lumber, you're selling walls, right?
Well, we're selling a house.
Okay.
You're like a prefabricated house that comes off of a flatbed, and you just bolt the thing together.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, where it's like full built components that do 80%.
Wow.
And then you're just going in and customizing it.
That was a stupid question, but I'm glad it teed up a great answer.
Oh, okay.
Because I really kind of simplified it. I mean, the degree to which you've customized the integration experience for the customer is really what it comes down to. It doesn't seem daunting to you to kind of build out the similar functionality for an Oracle integration. When you think about the vision, a few years out, where you want to go, what does seem like a challenge? What seems like the most challenging part of where you want to be 2 to 5 years from now?
See, I don't try not to even think a year out.
Maybe the most challenging thing is guessing what the world's going to be.
Yeah, it's just guessing, where technology's going to go. It's almost like kind of like where's technology going to go? So like you look at AIs now starting to like invade. Sure. They're bringing in this low code. We're gonna enable business users, enable people who don't really have technical, traditional technical backgrounds, make them be able to fulfill their own requests that would normally go to an IT department. So it's like normally, 10 years ago, it's like, I want, this button added to the screen that's going to simplify this business process. This takes me half an hour, and I've got to click this button 5 times a week. So you're going to save all this time by, automating this. IT, go do this for me. And they would just say, oh, we're busy, we can't do that. We're bringing consultants, all the same stuff that normally happens.
Yeah.
There's clashes between those two business units. Now, what they're trying, what we're pushing towards is, low code, and how are we going to now give the business users the ability to put their own button on there and have some API that they can call that, IT's kind of pre-vetted or whatever.
Right. Coding as configuration kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of stuff or whatever. But what I think is going to be interesting is they're starting to now use AI to make business users be almost a little bit more, it's almost scary. It's like we're going to have AI kind of fill in the gaps of what we were going to have maybe some, pseudocoders do.
It is scary because somebody's going to do it poorly before it gets done well, right?
Well, there's beta testers, so.
Right. That's right.
They're the pilot customers, so.
Right. We're just going to let this AI system do all your coding. It'll probably be fine.
Yeah. But that's kind of what I mean, 2 years, I think that is where things are going to, we're still going to continuously keep pushing for more APIs for everything to kind of like encapsulate the hardcore, business processes. We need those APIs to kind of make something that all these other things that we're building can consume it. The AIs, the low codes, all that kind of stuff. Still need all those APIs to be consumed. Maybe at some point in time, AI will be able to pump those APIs out, but I don't know. That's going to be tough. That seems pretty farther out, but I could see where they're going to have some type of AI augmented, low code solution to further, we'll call it enable business, users to do stuff.
A little more plug and play capability, right? Yeah, it's hard to say what will happen in the next 2 to 5 years with those things. That's a really good point. That could change a lot of people's product development and so on when it comes down to that customization configuration aspect, right? Like you might still, your core product or whatever, you're going to build it in a certain way, but that kind of that last layer where the user's somewhat savvy, or the internal tech department of the customer or whatever might have a little more room to tweak things on their own. That's interesting. I hope your vision for that 2 to 5 year goal plays out just as you'd like, and we see you guys doing exactly what you're doing in Oracle in a couple of years, what you're doing now in the SAP world. And congrats on the funding round.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
Kind of good luck getting, kind of scaling that up and crushing all those goals over the next year or so.
Yeah, it should be interesting here with kind of how the job market, like there's been a bunch of tech layoffs, so it is interesting that, we were trying to find people, what was it? It was like a year and a half ago when like, you couldn't find anybody.
At a peak. And
yeah, exactly. So it's going to be interesting. We're just starting actually.
Everyone wants a house for a sign-on bonus.
Yes, exactly. It was amazing. I was talking to people who were like a year out of college and expecting like 6-digit salary, sometimes starting with like a 2 in the front. So it was just like, it was amazing.
I don't think the bottom's fallen out by any means, but people have kind of recoiled back a year to kind of how things were before it got berserk. Because it was really all those overpaying companies that are the ones that made the deepest cuts so far, right?
Yes.
That's not a coincidence, in my opinion.
No, it's not.
They were hoarding and hogging all the talent, and then they come loose as soon as they were done with them.
Yeah, as soon as the cheap money dried up, as
soon as the money wasn't free anymore. Now it's back to you guys who can actually, produce quality products and go to market with them and sell to customers.
We're just a little bit more prudent with our funds, and we're not doing any speculative development or anything like that, and we are not overstaffing. That's for sure.
Yeah,
so
that's good. Well, congrats on the funding round. Good luck on the next year ahead. Thanks for being a guest. Appreciate you being on the show.
Awesome. Thanks.